we've talked about Silvergate, Signature, Silicon Valley Bank here over the last couple of years a little bit. I actually don't think that we've had anybody that went through what happened in a number of different regards. What was Silvergate like when you first joined? How did it evolve over time? Like, what were the different aspects of the Bitcoin ecosystem that they were touching and trying to expand on? I guess give us a high level of your experience there with what you can share, understanding that some of it's probably
absolutely. Silvergate was a fantastic chapter in my career, and of all the past chapters in my career, definitely my favorite. It was a special place. I'd say that I was interested in Silvergate to begin with because from the outside in Bitcoin, we're always interested in these sort of markers of institutional adoption. Like when I joined Zappo, Fidelity wasn't in yet. You had done some things at Fidelity, but it kind of hadn't commercialized their product yet until maybe 2018.
Yeah, that was more like just making sure it didn't die.
There you go.
Like the conversations at Fidelity were, kind of touch and go with legal risk and compliance. So that was more like life support when I was there. The rubber hit the road during that bull run in 2017, I would say.
Okay.
And then they got serious about trying to deliver with products.
But there are these markers. I think everybody in Bitcoin, we're excited that there's ETFs. When I came into Bitcoin professionally, it was like Fidelity's in, ICE is in. Now we've got ETFs. It's really interesting. And we kind of look and kind of dig. And it's who's driving that? Who's got the opinion? Does Larry Fink really believe it? What have they said on the record? And Silvergate was this super interesting bank that I remember listening to an episode of Alan Lane, this former CEO of Silvergate, with Peter McCormick, 2019, and they had raised $114 million in a private offering, and then they went public in the fall of 2019, and it was just a super innovative bank. And you'd read their filings and try to understand what this bank was doing. It's are they trying to become a payments company? Are they trying to be more like Square than a boring old commercial bank? And I joined the company in 2018, and they really had a nascent credit business at that point. Silvergate's journey started in around 2013, because Alan is a level 10 Bitcoiner and a wonderful person, an incredibly sharp banker and businessman. He found Bitcoin and simply viewed it as an opportunity in the first instance to provide deposit services to startup companies like Zappo, like Coinbase, companies that had raised from kind of A-list venture firms and just needed a bank. And that was sort of the first inning. Ultimately, it became, this is an interesting, growing franchise of customers. What are their problems and how do we solve them? And that manifested the Silvergate Exchange Network, which helped with, transactions, sort of the instant side of liquidity, which ultimately transferred over $1 trillion of value. And when they started, like I said, 2013, 14 with the Bitcoin Digital Asset Initiative, it was only Bitcoin. And again, like Wences, I think Alan, Ben Reynolds, Kate Frere, the Silvergate team is really responsible for, a lot of the institutional success of companies that have grown and have survived through these terrible bear markets, and a lot of Bitcoin success. I mean, you can't, the price is posted in the bar out there, but that price is denominated in US dollars. And it wasn't easy to get a bank account. It wasn't easy to settle trades in the early days of Bitcoin. By the time I arrived, because Alan was a 40-year banker, thank you. He recognized that Bitcoin, I think ahead of many, recognized that Bitcoin was unique collateral, especially relative to the sort of lending that a lot of banks do. And they had sort of scoped out and piloted a Bitcoin over collateralized lending business. When I got there, the bank was maybe $2 billion in assets. It ultimately grew to $15 billion in assets. The loan book by commitments was less than $50 million. Ultimately was almost $1.5 billion. We lent $205 million to MicroStrategy, multiple facilities with Marathon. Very institutional, conservative book. We never had any losses, and it was an incredible place to work, both from a strategic perspective and from just a vision perspective. I'm still convinced that Silvergate was miles ahead, and it's only been confirmed since then that Silvergate was miles ahead of other banks, both in their conviction around the asset of Bitcoin and the strategic plans that Alan and his team put in place to commercialize that conviction and serve clients. I mean, Silvergate really, at the heart of like any good business, they serve their client. We serve our clients very well.
So help me with the sequencing. It starts with the basic, products and services, really just bank accounts. Bank accounts historically throughout Bitcoin's history, very difficult for businesses to find a bank that'll even open up an account. If they get one, it's always been kind of a tenuous relationship, gets shut down at any moment. PNC used to service companies, and then they kind of kick them out. Sometimes Chase, for a period of time, you can get away with it. Wells Fargo, always hostile, but you had Silvergate, you had Silicon Valley Bank, and those were just like really the A-list. If you had a company, you needed backing and introductions historically from, let's say, Andreessen Horowitz or like a big fund that's like, give them a bank account. But for Silvergate, it starts with the basic, servicing from bank account side, and then it grows. The credit business is what grew next, or what was sort of the sequencing of the products and services offered by Silvergate?
So I'd say it's deposits, and then payments, and then credit. And the send became ultimately ubiquitous. Anybody who was, sort of active in ultimately digital asset trading had an account with Silvergate, because you needed to settle on the send. And Silvergate, we had 1,600 clients, so really unique. Had the network and connected the pipes and enabled 24/7 settlement. And along that journey, like that's the product journey. Alongside of that was, Silvergate was a bank founded in the late 80s. And ultimately, it was a very much a crawl, walk, run. There was much less regulatory clarity, obviously, than there is now. So there was growing conviction over time that like this can be a part of our business, and then ultimately, this can become this client segment is big enough, and it makes enough sense for us to totally organize all of the bank's efforts around serving that industry, which I think was strategically real interesting. A lot of people don't know is we had a very low, to get too in the weeds here, but a very low loan to deposit ratio. Management recognized that digital assets are so volatile and the market cap can fluctuate all over the place. You needed to be an incredibly liquid bank.
And 24/7. Just real quick.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember SEN or Signet, the signature equivalent? So these are like private blockchains, effectively. A lot of like crypto funds and exchanges would use these networks. And was SEN a fork of Ethereum at the time?
SEN was not on any blockchain.
It was not. Okay,
because
Signet was.
We had the network and just connect. We had 1,600 clients. So if Coinbase is doing a trade with Genesis, is doing a trade with Kraken, and they're all clients. That's volume that could go through internally.
And this is how dumb banks are, because this innovation really just extended the banking hours for clients that actually needed it, because these were 24/7 markets. Like, it seems really basic, but this is an incredible innovation when it was offered, and it grew like wildfire because there were so many clients that actually, it wasn't like a nice to have, it was a complete necessity for them to have access to the expansion of banking hours.
Or just some innovative bankers that looked around and asked their clients, what problem can we solve? Well, we've got this thing that trades 24/7 and clients want to trade it 24/7, but we need to sell the dollar leg of it.
Yeah.
And we were uniquely positioned to do that.
Yeah.
But the point that I was mentioning about sort of like ultimately the decision to focus solely on the digital asset community meant that we had to be very liquid. The fact that we were very liquid allowed us to survive the biggest bank run in history, bigger than Continental Illinois in 1984, and make the decision to voluntarily wind down the bank. So no receivership, but voluntarily wind down the bank. So the bank was purposely organized. We had a very low loan to deposit ratio. That $1.5 billion of Bitcoin-backed lending commitments was stacked against a $15 billion bank. So it was purpose-built because Alan understood exactly what we were dealing with in terms of the asset and the industry.